This is the Forbidden City. It is not just a collection of quiet palaces for tourists. It is not a stage for the overly dramatic romances you see on screen. This is reality. The year is 1760. Emperor Qianlong is at the height of his power. The Qing Empire is vast, wealthy, and stable. This is the Golden Age. Right here, right now. But what is it actually like to live here for a week? Not as the emperor who rules it all, not as a high-ranking official attending a morning audience, but as a young woman who has just been chosen to enter the inner circles of the palace. Based on historical court regulations and archival records, we have reconstructed what 7 days as a new consort truly felt like. It is a world of immense beauty, but rigid order. We are looking at the real Forbidden City, the meticulous morning rituals, the weight of the embroidered silk, the subtle language of a bow, and the atmosphere of a place where every step is governed by centuries of tradition. From the moment you first pass through the Meridian Gate to your final night resting under the yellow-tiled roofs. This is what life was really like inside the heart of the great Qing Empire. You were not chosen. You were classified. Standing before the gate of divine prowess, the northern spine of the Forbidden City, you realize this is the boundary where your life ends and your existence as state property begins. The towering red walls swallow the sky, and your silk gown is stiff with the dust of a journey, fueled by family expectations. In 1760, under the peak of Emperor Qianlong's power, you were merely one of hundreds of girls aged 13 to 16. This is the Xiunu selection. Individual identity is irrelevant here. You are defined solely by the 8-banner system, military and social silos that dictate your fate. This is less a pageant and more a clinical census of the aristocracy. The officials of the Imperial Household Department inspect you like livestock. They verify your genealogy with cold precision. A single commoner in your lineage means instant rejection. Then comes the physical scrutiny, the straightness of your spine, the clarity of your skin, even the sound of your breath. A single trip on your platform shoes, like the girl 2 rows ahead, results in a shameful dismissal. Identity is stripped away. Eunuchs call you not by name, but by your father's rank and your banner color. As you pass through the massive central archway and deep into the silent, cold courtyards, the world outside vanishes. The sound of the heavy wooden beams sliding into place is final. Your first night is spent in a cramped room on a hard Kang bed. The girl you were this morning is gone. You are now a gear in the great Qing machine, where the only exits are the emperor's favor or death. You wake not to your own will, but to the sharp commands of senior maids. In the Forbidden City, time is governed by regulation, not the sun. You quickly learn that power here is not abstract. It is a physical reality, measured in ranks, from the lowly Dame to the Empress. Your position on this ladder dictates your existence. Power is first measured in humanity, the number of servants who must bow to you. As a candidate, you have no one. The Empress, however, controls a massive human machine dedicated to her every whim. Power is also measured in proximity. The closer your quarters in the east and west 6 palaces are to the central axis, the higher your status. Despite the outward legend of gold and jade, the reality is a golden cage. Your life is a series of calculated rations. Your rank determines the exact amount of meat and rice you consume, and every bite is recorded by the Internal Affairs Department. The rooms are cramped, heated by heavy charcoal with paper windows that mute the world into a hazy gray. As you walk the narrow corridors beneath yellow-tiled roofs, you realize that every silk robe's weight and every bow's angle is a matter of state record. You go to bed when the palace dictates, realizing that even your appetite is no longer your own. You have been in the Forbidden City for 3 days, and the Emperor remains a ghost. Today is not about glory. It is about Li Rights, the tool used to maintain an unbreakable imperial order. You wake long before dawn, while the palace is still draped in ink-black shadows. The morning's core is the Qinggan morning audience, a mandatory ritual of paying respects to the empress. This is a political performance, not a social visit. Moving in a silent, rhythmic line, you undergo a test of physical precision, kneeling at a specific angle and kowtowing at a precise tempo. You must never look directly at higher-ranking consorts. To do so is a challenge to the cosmic order. This is Confucianism in its most practical form. Every person has a place, and every place has a posture. But you're also being watched by the Imperial Household Department. These eunuchs and officials act as referees, recording every movement in the ledger. In 1760, the palace didn't need whips. They had these permanent records. A single stumble or an inappropriate gaze determines your future promotions, your allowance, or if you will be forgotten for 20 years in a side palace. The rest of the day is grueling training. You practice the palace walk on high-platform Manchu shoes and the standard language, the humble way to refer to yourself. By midday, standing in the heat with no shade for low-ranking girls, you realize your greatest enemy is the eunuch's record book. You return to your room with bruised knees and a stiff back, understanding that here, every movement is a calculation and every silence is a survival strategy. Today, you confront the most brutal reality of palace life, the passage of time. There are no imperial summons or grand ceremonies, only the oppressive silence of high red walls. You realize your life is no longer measured by achievements, but by your ability to endure. The Forbidden City may have nearly 10,000 rooms, but your world has shrunk to a few courtyards. As a resident of the Great Interior, your primary duty is to be present and to wait. Your days are filled with activities designed to kill time while maintaining the facade of a refined lady. You spend hours on embroidery stitching silk peonies you may never wear. You play chess with other candidates, exchanging gossip filtered through layers of caution. You attend lectures on women's virtues, a Confucian code that demands absolute submission and patience. The atmosphere is one of forced tranquility. Every movement is deliberate, meant to preserve imperial dignity. You find yourself focusing on the smallest details, the way light hits incense smoke, or the shifting shadows on the sundial, because the world outside has ceased to exist. The architecture reinforces this confinement, high windowless walls and rooms filled with heavy dark wood. In 1760, the palace was meticulously perfect, but that perfection only highlights how static your life has become. You realize that for a woman here, waiting is a career. You wait for a night with the emperor for a promotion, or for a shift in political winds. Most will spend decades in this state of perpetual anticipation. You are essentially a decorative object part of the emperor's collection, kept in a beautiful high-walled vault until you are needed, if ever. As the sun sets, you realize today was exactly like yesterday, and your existence has become a long, quiet line of days, waiting for a voice that may never call your name. After 5 days, you realize that imperial favor has nothing to do with romance. It is a cold, clinical transaction. The emperor, like an ancient deity, demands utility over love. You provide total submission and the potential for heirs. In exchange, the state grants you status and safety for your family. This is the law of the palace functioning with the precision of a contract. The mechanism of this exchange is the lupi pai, the green-headed tablets. Every evening after dinner, the head eunuch presents a silver tray to Emperor Qianlong. By flipping a tablet, the emperor chooses a name. In 1760, this is not an act of passion, but a routine of governance. If your name is called, you cease to be a person and become a ritual object. You are bathed, perfumed, and stripped of personal belongings, then wrapped in a specific cloak and carried by eunuchs to the bedchamber to ensure total security. The encounter is governed by rigid protocols and minimal conversation. Outside the door, eunuchs track the time, recording every detail, date, hour, and duration, into the imperial archives. Even the most private moments are matters of state record. Yet, the stakes are immense. This is the only path to real power. A pregnancy, specifically the birth of a son, is the ultimate fulfillment of your contract. It is the only way to elevate your rank and protect your kin from political ruin. However, the pressure is staggering. Favor is as fleeting as a flipped tablet. Without an heir or once interest, wanes a consort risks becoming a ghost, forgotten within the red walls. As you are carried back in the dead of night, you understand that the emperor is the sun you revolve around and the final judge of your worth. You have played your part. Now you wait to see if you will become the mother of an empire or remain just a name on a discarded piece of wood. 6 days have passed, and you're about to see a side of the Forbidden City that most legends ignore. Today, a consort who stood in the morning line with you yesterday is gone. Her room is empty. Her name is no longer mentioned. In the palace, you don't need a formal execution to be destroyed. You simply cease to exist in the eyes of the system. The inner court is as crowded and dense as any city, but the pressure here is psychological. Imagine hundreds of women and thousands of servants packed into a maze of walled courtyards. Every palace is its own world, with its own hierarchy of maids and eunuchs. The lower ranks live in cramped side rooms with little light and poor ventilation. In the winter of 1760, these rooms were cold and damp despite the charcoal braziers. If you are a low-ranking consort who has lost favor, your living conditions can deteriorate rapidly. Disgrace in the Qing court is a physical reality. It begins with a demotion. You are stripped of your title, moving from Pin to Guiron, or lower. Then come the budget cuts. The Department of Household Affairs reduces your rations of meat, vegetables, and coal. Your personal servants are reassigned to more promising consorts. Finally, there is the Cold Palace Lengong. This is not necessarily a specific building, but a state of total isolation. You are moved to a remote, decaying corner of the Forbidden City, where the walls are peeling and the garden is overgrown. You are left there to live out the rest of your life in silence, forbidden from seeing the emperor or your family ever again. During the Qianlong era, this fall from grace can happen for the smallest reasons. You don't need to commit a great crime. You could be disgraced for a breach of etiquette, for an unlucky word, or simply because the emperor's interest has shifted elsewhere. Once the imperial favor is gone, you become a target for those who remain. The afternoon is spent in a state of constant observation. Everyone is watching everyone else. You see the eunuchs whispering in the corners of the corridors, trading information like currency. Gossip is the lifeblood of the palace, but it is a dangerous one. A single rumor about your health, your family's loyalty, or your inappropriate behavior can be reported to the Internal Affairs Department. There are no streetlights here, and the corridors after dark are patrolling grounds for guards who are looking for rule breakers, not for your safety. At this point, you realize the most brutal truth of the Forbidden City. If you fail, it is rarely because you were beaten by a rival. You lose because of the system of rules. Every action you take is recorded. Your greatest enemy is not another woman. It is the rigid, invisible net of regulations that monitors your every breath. You are not fighting people. You are fighting a record that never sleeps. Night falls over the East Six palaces. The atmosphere is thick with tension. You stay inside your room, listening to the heavy footsteps of the night watchman and the distant sound of a gate being locked. In the room next to yours, someone is crying softly. In another, someone is practicing their calligraphy by a dim lamp, desperate to maintain a perfect image. The Forbidden City never truly rests. It only waits for the next person to fail. You bolt your door and realize that in this place, the red walls don't just keep people out. They ensure that those inside can never truly escape their mistakes. Your final day has arrived. You wake up and realize that the Forbidden City remains exactly as it was on your first day, silent, golden, and indifferent. The palace does not care that your youth has faded. It does not recognize that your time here is drawing to a close. You spend the morning doing what every aging consort eventually does. You stand in the courtyard of the Palace of Longevity and Health Shohangong and try to take it all in. This is the final destination, the quiet corner where the echoes of the empire go to die. The inner court is as structured as ever. You see the younger consorts in their bright silks, the eunuchs hurrying with their ledgers, and the officials bowing in the distance. They look at the high red walls with the same hope and fear that you once felt. You look at the yellow-tiled roofs and the heavy stone foundations, and you realize the most crushing truth of this place. The dynasty is eternal, but the individual is merely temporary. You were never a player in this game. You were a drop of water in an ocean of tradition, a replaceable part of a machine designed to last 10,000 years. But that is the future. Right now, in the year 1760, the dynasty is at its peak. And standing here amidst the scent of incense and the shadow of the sundial, the system feels immovable. You eat your final meal in your designated quarters, rice a small portion of steamed fish, and the same tea you have drank for years. You look around your room. There is nothing to pack. Everything you own belongs to the palace. You leave behind the silk fans you embroidered and the jade hairpins you were granted. The head eunuch of your palace does not say goodbye. You have fulfilled your function, and that is all the system requires of you. You walk toward the northern palaces, toward the Palace of Compassion and Tranquility, signing gong. This is where the widows of the previous reigns live, the ghosts of the past. They sit in silence, reading sutras and drinking tea forgotten by the world outside. No one remembers their names, their loves, or their sacrifices. They have simply become part of the architecture. You turn back to look one last time. The Forbidden City lies behind you, vast and shimmering under the Beijing sky. Thousands of people are still scheming, praying, and aging within these walls. Your life has been recorded in a ledger and filed away. The palace continues, but for you, the waiting is finally over. That was 7 days in the Forbidden City of 1760. It was not a cinematic fantasy, but a rigid reality. It was a place where human lives were managed like inventory. One flipped tablet could bring power. One minor mistake could lead to total erasure. The true legacy of this palace is not its beauty, but its ambition to create a perfect, unchanging hierarchy. The system turned people into functions and families into administrative records. It was a world built on inequality and absolute control, designed to suppress the individual for the sake of the dynasty. For centuries, this cold machinery functioned exactly as intended. The people are gone, but the system's logic remains. We still see its influence in how power is structured and how history is recorded. The Forbidden City stands as a reminder that while individuals are temporary, the structures built to control them can last for centuries. The story is preserved in the archives, waiting for those who want to see the reality behind the red walls.